We have Dr. Leigh Vinokur. She's part of the NCCC. We saw the details of the CBD pilot program, which were released earlier this week and over the weekend. Well, she is one of the top cannabis physicians in the country. She's a key voice in how this pilot program is going to develop, and also inside the walls of Washington, D.C., and how they're going to view this pilot program and what is going to be deemed as successful. So she speaks directly to the forefront, and we are going to find out exactly what we should be watching as we look at this pilot program and perhaps a full-scale model going into 2027. We've teed it up earlier this week, so here we are on a Wednesday. So with that, let's welcome an AV on a Wednesday. Special time, special place. Good to see you, my friend.
Yep, it's good to see you as well. It's going to be a good episode. It's going to be nice to set the record straight on the CBD pilot program. I know that there was some things yesterday that might have been not factually accurate, but I mean, it's a moving situation, and we got some clarity here this morning, and we're going to get even more clarity with the show today. Like I said, set the record straight on the nuances and structure of what that pilot program could look like.
Yeah, indeed. So with that, let's welcome in Dr. Leigh Vinokur. First time to the live stream. Great to meet you. How are things?
Nice to meet you too.
Wow. Yes. Are you in Washington, I assume, or whereabouts are you located in the U.S.?
I'm in Baltimore.
Baltimore. And ready for springtime, I bet. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Well, yeah. Well, it's good to have you on. We've obviously have a lot of interest with our community that follow the cannabis space, and some of the news that basically broke out over the past couple of days pertaining to the CBD pilot program. You know, we've looked at this, sort of industry with regarding CBD, and it's operated in the gray zone for years, widely used, poorly standardized, and completely outside the medical system. So what should we be watching for now that this pilot program, it looks like it's going to launch next April, and some key things I think that a lot of people should be paying attention to as it materializes over the coming months?
Well, I think it's important. I mean, we've had this patchwork of cannabis use all over the country because states have taken it into their own hand since cannabis was registered in the 70s as Schedule I with no medical use. Even though in 2017, the Institute of Medicine did a study, looked at 10,000 abstracts and said there's value and we need more research in certain conditions like pain. So I think we're starting to catch up now to this. And, hemp and cannabis, I mean, it's the same plant, you know?
Yes. Thank you. Right.
It isn't, there's no difference. It's just there was a federal definition that the cannabis plant for hemp had to have less than 0.3% THC in it. But you can get cannabis that's CBD dominant 20-1 that's essentially the same. So it's the same. But I think it's really important. We need more real world studies. And seniors doing it with CMS is pretty good because seniors are the fastest growing demographic since these states, if you look state to state, who's been looking into cannabis as an alternative, for things like chronic pain.
Absolutely.
For those that don't know, within this pilot program, from a physician's perspective, is there a certain indication or certain therapeutic uses that, let's say, CMS will be looking for as a whole to give a metric of success to this pilot program? Or is it more so an all-encompassing, well, this is lowering the cost of medical treatment for these patients, the pilot program is valid?
I think they're going to look at certain conditions. Certainly chronic pain is one of the big ones, and to maybe perhaps use less opioids for things like chronic pain. They're going to work with oncologists, so even looking at cancer pain, which in the past, before the big opioid crisis, and we as physicians, I must say, were duped a bit from pharmaceutical companies with this idea that you can start to use opioids short term and they're not addictive, and that's not necessarily true. So we have our part in the opioid crisis. But I think both cancer pain and non-cancer pain are two big areas they're going to look at. And you know, the key is to have physicians involved, you know, not just handing them a bottle and saying, here's some cannabidiol and go ahead and use it. Because you really have to titrate it. And seniors especially, you know, everyone's used to a one size fits all pill. And that's not how cannabis works. It's very personalized.
Yeah.
You have to learn how to titrate it. So hopefully they'll have someone assigned to hold hands for the NCCC. We're hoping to provide some guidance to legislators and to CMS about how to approach this, and then how to collect real world data to see, you know, is this making a difference? Is it lowering opioid use? You know, is it lowering costs? Things like that.
Does the fact that cannabis and CBD needs to be titrated on a patient by patient basis give any sort of pause to physicians when they're evaluating the standard of care, as it's not acting like a consistent pharmaceutical drug that is just not really titratable? It's getting the same dose every time.
Right. Well, we're sort of entering this age of personalized medicine where we're looking at you know, even in cancer tumors, special genetic mutations where we're personalizing medicine. So we're in that era for other medicines too. There are a lot of people, you know, when they do clinical trials and pick doses, there are a lot of people that don't respond to that. So I think that shouldn't give pause, but it does take some patience and explanation, because we as a society are so used to, here's a pill, take it, and this should work. But there are always people on the fringes that dose doesn't work, or that particular non-steroidal anti-inflammatory like ibuprofen doesn't work as well as naproxen. So there are individual responses to all medications, but cannabis especially is personalized.
We look at the timing in all this, and this pilot program, it arrives the same time Washington is moving towards cannabis rescheduling, which gets a ton of attention. We saw the executive order that President Trump signed back in December, still waiting for a sign off, the Attorney General Pam Bondi. So do you think this pilot in any ways is a precursor to a broader cannabinoid reform?
Yeah, I mean, one would hope that that's what it would be. It's ridiculous. You know, back in the 70s when Nixon signed the Controlled Substance Act, he actually ignored the Schaefer Commission, which he put up with one of his friends, Schaefer, to talk about the dangers of marijuana, as they called it then. And they recommended it really wasn't that dangerous and it shouldn't be restricted. But he ignored it and he signed it into law. And ever since then, it's created big problems because there is medical use. Schedule 1 says no medical use at all, and you can't do research. You have to get a Schedule 1 license. It's very prohibitive. So by rescheduling it, while it's still not going to be a prescription like you can go to the pharmacy and get, it'll free up the research and we'll have more research. And the pilot program is using cannabidiol, which is the not an intoxicating form of a compound that's within cannabis. We know THC is the most intoxicating form. But there's different types of cannabidiol too. There's full spectrum with the definition that hemp has today at 0.3%. I know they're looking into changing that definition because there was a loophole for safety and people were creating other products with it. And that is one problem. But taking this away from patients who really need it, that it's more reasonable in price to get and things like that is sort of not the way to do it. But that's one of the things. But by making it a Schedule 3, allowing more research, and then dealing with what they're going to do with hemp, as we said, it's the same exact plant, cannabis sativa. I think that'll all help with it.
What's your thoughts that we're in 2026 and cannabis is still classified as a Schedule 1 drug? Like we've talked about the past, how this needs to change, how a lot of makers, like this is just our opinion, but still are in some ways stuck in the just say no era of Nancy Reagan, the 1980s, which by the way is 40 years ago. But now here we are in 2026. Based on conversations that you've had in Washington, what's the sentiment like? Because on paper, it looks like we're on the verge of something different. It's long overdue, but are you seeing and hearing that behind the scenes?
Well,
get
I
access
think
to?
there's still this undercurrent. It's a gateway drug. I mean, that was always the training. Physicians don't have really good training. I had been out and practicing for 10 years and was on faculty at the University of Maryland when a colleague told me got his paper published on the endocannabinoid levels in stressed rats. And I was like, what was that word? Endo what? I mean, I had never heard of it. And I was practicing for 10 years, more than 10 years at the time. And it was just, and they still don't really teach it in all the medical schools. I think, physicians as a whole, maybe they're not comfortable recommending it to their patients in the states where they have it. But I think there's this turnover that they believe, yes, it has value and we need to do trials. But the problem is you can't create clinical guidelines for people, even though we have all this science, tens of thousands of papers that say you can reduce opioid use in cancer patients if you use cannabis. But that's in one state. You can't go to another state. They don't know what the cannabis is. I mean, they know in that study what they've used, but it isn't the same. We need to get rid of Schedule 3 so there's standardization in all of the medications so that when you use a certain chemovar of a CBD dominant to take care of this pain, that somebody in another state where it's legal now can get that same chemovar. And that's what will make standardized clinical guidelines. And I think the government needs to understand it. It is not, you know what the biggest gateway drug is probably today in the world? Sugar. Okay. Yeah. So we start on it when we're kids and it can become addictive your whole life. So it really, patients have been telling us this works state to state. We know this. We need this federal government to catch up with it, and we need science to catch up. We need to make it easier to do trials, to get and look at standardized cannabinoid medicines, even if they're herbal, even if they're not synthetic, but standardized medicines, so that when we're all talking about the same thing when we talk about trials and efficacy.
Well said.
In terms of this pilot program, who is there more onus on in terms of the patient being able to leverage CBD as an alternative? Is it more so the medical provider recommending it as an alternative to something in their current regimen, or is it more so on the patient asking the doctor to give them this alternative within this program?
Well, we hope that the pilot program, the physicians are going to give them the alternative to try. And then they're going to track the symptoms so we can look at real world data of how it's working. But the onus, it should be on the doctor. But listen, some of these physicians, primary care, how hard is it to get in? They have hundreds of patients they see in a week. They spend 15 minutes. It's almost like, I like to think of it like diabetes. When you're diagnosed with diabetes, your doctor says, okay, you're going to need insulin. You're going to need to change your diet. We're going to follow you for that. But we need to have somebody there that's knowledgeable, whether it's a nurse in the practice or somebody that understands this is the nutritional guidance and can spend the time with these patients, as opposed to just saying, okay, here's your script for insulin. Good luck. Figure out how to give yourself a shot and figure out what your diet. No, so it really has to be hands-on. And
so how do you do that though? Is there
it sounds like there needs to be an AI chatbot companion portion of this.
I'm sure that could help. I'm sure that could help if seniors could access that. Some can't, but it does. It needs to be the physicians working with people in their practice that have the time to counsel it, that are knowledgeable in cannabis. And we have a lot of amazing cannabinoid medicine specialists in this country that have programs with teaching, Dr. Dustin Sulak, Dr. Bonnie Goldstein, Dr. Ethan Russo, and they have webinars, they have teaching. So it's kind of meshing with these experts, the Society of Cannabis Clinicians that I've been a member of for a long time. There are experts out there.
Yeah.
So I don't think we can put 100% of the onus on these busy primary care that are just trying to churn them out and keep up, because there aren't enough primary care. But we have to get people into the practice, nurses that understand it and that have had training in it and things like that. They can work with the patients to make it successful, and then to collect data as they follow up and see, is it
And
helping?
do you feel that the fact that cannabis is looming on a Schedule 3 reclassification, as well as this pilot program being co-signed by the federal government via the CMS and HHS, it's going to give medical professionals more solace in recommending these potential therapeutics to their patients and entering in to the program?
Yeah, I mean, that's the hope of the program too, that physicians will start to do that. I mean, I see so many patients, in my practice, even get referral for hospice patients, which it's something great to keep them engaged with their family and pain-free while they're going through this terrible time, making them comfortable in hospice, where hospice physicians are like, look, yeah, we need this. But they refer them out to experts, and we're so far behind so many other countries. Like in Canada, you can use cannabis in hospitals in hospice.
Yeah.
And because it's federally illegal, absolutely, we can't do that. They have, laws and rules of bringing it in and being in a lockbox and whatever. But, Israel is light years ahead in research, and Australia keeps patient data information, and we need to create these registries and do that. And the hope is that HHS and CMS are going to start to do that with this pilot program of cannabidiol.
Do you think the U.S. still has time to be a global leader in research pertaining to this space?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always kind of time to do that and catch up and do it if we do it right and we understand it and we get out of that mentality of, just say no to drugs kind of thing.
I hear you.
We really have to get away from that.
Within this program, with leveraging the ACOs and leveraging the BEI kind of just mechanisms, is that standard with how CMS and the government rolls these things out in terms of just the mechanics of the actual programs, or is this unique to the CBD program?
Yeah, I think it's good because you have these ACOs that are managing practices, and they're bigger groups, so you can, get a bigger patient population from it. So I think, it's a good way to start this. I think that's probably why they decided on that as the first step, as opposed to going to individual doctors or, health systems and things like that.
So they're casting with the net, essentially using the using the ACOs and the mechanisms that they're using to implement this program.
Right. To start it and then see if it can expand.
You said in so many words earlier that the CMS isn't reimbursing CBD through traditional claims. They're going to be issuing a $500 annual benefit card that patients can use to purchase qualifying hemp-derived CBD products. So in your view, is $500 enough, I guess, to meaningfully impact some of these conditions?
Well, it depends. And I'm sure some of the companies, and qualified means, not all CBD is the same, right?
Yes.
Getting it from a gas station or a smoke shop is a little bit different than getting it from a company that does batch to batch testing with certificates of analysis to prove there's no mold, there's no bacteria, there's no heavy metals, and that what's on the label is in the bottle. So it has to be tested that way, verified with these good CBD companies. And then, I'm assuming that they're going to work with the federal government initially to get this pilot program rolling. But, in the past, if I had a patient that I would want on maybe some THC dominant stuff at night and CBD dominant in the day for chronic pain all day long, I would steer them towards, some really high reputation, reputable CBD companies that have these certificate of analysis and things like that, because it is cheaper than buying the 20 to 1 deemed cannabis
I know.
in the dispensary, you know?
Well, I asked the
So-
question because you wonder if patients will gravitate towards some cheaper, lower quality products. But do you think that's
Well, I mean, I'm assuming that there are a set amount of providers
Yeah.
that will be in this program that are co-signed and
Right.
audited by the government, that these are the products that are
Right.
within the universe of this pilot program, and you can't really go, let's say, out of market to just go get your products. Like, these are the products that we're offering.
plus? I think it helps too with the demographic, does it not?
Yeah, no, I think that they're going to, well, the demographic are the demographics of the practice, seniors
Yeah.
in primary care or cancer patients in the oncology groups and such. Yeah, but the products themselves, I'm assuming that the federal government's going to work with some companies that meet these standards, that have certificates of analysis, which ensure safety. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the key. We have to ensure safety with these patients. We have to track their symptoms. We have to explain, you know, how to use it. And it's critical. That's why it is important that this program is centered around physicians doing it versus just having people sign up, you know, with a research organization and doing testing. And we want real world data. You know, real world data is always
And
best.
Mhm.
in terms of just overall market for cannabinoids, I mean, it's obviously not targeted and or concentrated in the geriatric population, or the 65 and up, that are being tested on this out of the gate. I mean, do you think that ultimately we get to something like the German model, to where cannabinoids are being covered by insurance down the road as a prescribed medication, if the data is here? Let's say this progresses into the Advantage program in 2027, like they potentially want to, and the medical community, as well as the insurance companies and the providers, start to adopt cannabis and it's proven to have medical value.
Well, I think that's the hope too, but I got to say Europe is light years ahead with
They
having
are.
medicine. I mean, I also do research and consult in the nutraceutical space,
Yeah.
which has a lot of similar issues to cannabinoid medicine with, you know, the way it's tested. Now, it's true that the FDA had said that CBD can't be considered a supplement the way it, you know, DAISHA has these laws here in the US. But in the nutraceutical space for years, I mean, there's a French pharmaceutical company, Pierre Fabre, and they have been making an herbal form of saw palmetto for men's health that is a prescription in some countries. We just
Okay.
don't have the FDA isn't really set up to create herbal approved medicines at
Mhm.
this point, but hopefully, you know, in the future, the Schedule 3 will help that. If there is to be some drug development, it'll help with insurance coverage,
Yes.
which some other countries have been looking into too.
Do you think that what we could be, and this is kind of out of the realm of what we're talking about, so forgive me if I'm kind of like just overstepping, but do you think what we're seeing right now with peptides and compounding pharmacies could set the stage for what a system could look like for cannabis and pharma
Great
coexisting?
That's a great question, because I'm also the medical director at several men's health clinics.
Oh, okay,
And
perfect.
we use a lot of compounding medications for them, including
Mhm.
hormonal health. And that could be a great avenue for eventually creating it in FDA approved compounded pharmacies. And
Yeah.
we are seeing this shift in peptides, even with the FDA, for what's considered acceptable and, you know, hormonal health for both men and women. So
Good to know.
that would be a good avenue, and it would still require a prescription and physician evaluation and follow-up and all of that. So
Just going to go to some of our audience with a question. We kind of touched on this earlier, but Cole Memo writes, can I choose products or does the doctor prescribe them? Your response to that?
well, right now, and even if it's Schedule 3, there won't be a prescription, you
Yeah.
know, so it isn't going to look like, you know, your doctor hands it to you and go to a pharmacy. And if this person is older and might be in the CMS program, there would, I assume, be several products that meet the specifications and then, they could probably pick, or if certain ACOs are going to partner with certain CBD companies that have all those specifications, less than 0.3% THC, certificates of analysis, all these safety standardizations, then perhaps you wouldn't be given a choice. But I think everything's evolving, so we don't know for sure yet.
When we look at some of these changes that we're talking about right now in plant-based medicine, have you had conversations with RFK? Like, how instrumental
No.
has it been? No, no.
No, not me personally. I'm not even sure that NCC has had these conversations yet. So, but we are going out and talking to legislators in
Yeah.
certain committees that are, work with HSS, work with the FDA, and work with CMS.
Yeah.
I guess that a good question would be, what is the mandate for NCCC?
Mhm.
Like, what is the ultimate goal? I mean, I'm assuming it's coalescing a group of businesses and organizations around the cause of the pilot program.
Right. It is. It's around the cause of the pilot program. And the mission is to keep patients and physicians front forward,
Okay.
even more so than industry. This needs to be directed as a physician directed, with patient voices in mind, for a successful program and to get real world data, so eventually it can expand into all different.
And in terms of the real world data, does it create a conflict if the patient is currently enrolled in, let's say, a medical marijuana program at the state level and is administering those substances as well as, let's say, any of the
I think there might
CBD?
be. I haven't seen the qualifications yet, but it might be people that have never used cannabis in the past,
Yeah.
that would be using this CBD, because you don't want confounding data, even if you're following real world, although oftentimes in real world studies you do have some confounding data that you have to explain and look at the statistics. But I think in the beginning, although they haven't set those rules yet that I've seen, that would be the cleanest way to do it at this point. Because
I'm just thinking about Florida. I mean, we've got a million medical card holders down here. A lot of them are the 65 and plus population that might also go in for this program potentially, and they're using THC products.
Well, this is going to be cannabidiol, non-intoxicating products for sure. Everybody worries about falls with THC and stuff, but at low doses, cannabidiol can be sort of awakening. At high doses, it can cause some drowsiness too. So, that's why it's important to titrate. But I would think that if somebody was already using THC, they wouldn't want to give that up and then just try cannabidiol.
Yeah.
Good times and interesting times, but a lot at stake here, I think, and especially for seniors. But even outside of that, I think it's just the whole stigma and how this industry is being viewed. But we're on the cusp, I think, of the biggest announcement that this industry has experienced with rescheduling in probably 50 years. But then with this as well, and proper research in place, some very important times when it comes to being not only a global leader, but just on how people view things differently and how to treat pain, how to treat certain illnesses. But I'm hopeful, obviously, this actually comes to fruition and people get the data that they want to have like a full scale rollout come 2027, which hopefully is indeed the case, right?
Well, that's the hope. I mean, patients have been telling us since 1995, when the the Compassionate Care Act was enacted in California, that medical cannabis works, as opposed to something like Marinol, which is a synthetic THC. It might be a different isomer, right hand, left hand, but there is this entourage effect with the plant, and a natural product like that, because there's 100 different cannabinoids in the plant. It's very complex, and there's probably 500 different compounds, including terpenes, which are found in many different plants and herbs. So for a long time, that's what patients have been telling us, and slowly we've rolled it out and enacted it. But I think it's time that we're all talking about the same exact formulation to really look at research.
So there was no real aha moment. It was just constant research that a lot of patients were coming to you and it made you change. Because we saw a lot of those same stories from doctors the day in the Oval Office when President Trump signed the actual executive order. But it was examples the doctors were sharing that their patients kept coming in and doing more and more research. They decided to look at this from a different perspective, and now they're full believers. And I think, you know, change doesn't happen overnight, right?
No, not usually. And it's listening to your patients and what they're saying. And let's face it, we have an internal system. The endocannabinoid system is so ingrained in our DNA that animals as low invertebrates as the sea squirt or hydra have components of the cannabinoid system. It
Correct.
regulates pain, it regulates memory, it regulates sleep. It's, you know, every organ in our body has cannabinoid receptors. Now we make our own, and there is this belief that sometimes hard to treat conditions that we don't have good treatments for, like even autism in children, is a function of our own endocannabinoid system. But that's why we respond to the plant cannabinoids.
Yeah,
So,
I hear you.
In terms of speaking to legislators, I mean, we've all come to the conclusion that hemp and cannabis are the same thing. This pilot program is rolling out with hemp-derived cannabinoids. Is any part of the mandate of the NCCC talking to legislators about extending the looming ban on hemp products via the CR?
I think that's
part of the conversation?
That's part of what's in the policy. You know, a few bad actors that look, you know, Delta 8 is sometimes the small amounts are in the plant. The biggest issue is the solvents, sometimes hydrocarbons that are carcinogenic that people have been using to create it. And when they rolled out the farm bill, they didn't put these precautions into it and testing. And I think that's it. But there are very good hemp companies that are reputable, that are doing the testing, that are but I think we don't need to take this away from patients from a few bad actors. You know, we need to work within the system with doctors and patients and see how we can save the definition, because full spectrum hemp that has less than the 0.3% THC, I've seen patients respond a little better to that than an isolate. I mean, we do have an FDA approved cannabidiol product. It's called Epidiolex. It was from GW Pharmaceuticals. But a lot of, I know in pediatrics, a lot of parents, their kids don't respond that well. Sometimes you need a little bit of THC.
Yeah.
But, and bringing it into the medical forefront, I hope myself that this will allow us to create medicines that have it. Because what's happening in a lot of states is first we had the medical, and then when we opened it up to adult use, and that's sort of not my thing, but is it more dangerous than alcohol or cigarettes? No, probably not. It isn't. It doesn't kill as many people as alcohol and cigarettes. But the point is, a lot of dispensaries have catered to that population, and the patients are getting lost even on the state level. So I'm really hoping that by doing this on the federal level, we can bring it back to a medicine and patients, you know, get rid of these crazy names that some of the products have.
That was the problem. That was the problem with the hemp industry. I mean, there are a lot of good actors in the hemp industry. Hemp products that are full spectrum with 0.3% THC are great for patients by all means, by all things considered. It's the hemp industry that has transpired under the guise of those products with exotic extracts and synthetics that have those chemical byproducts in it, THCA flower. That's the problem.
Have you paid attention to that side of the story all that much?
Excuse me?
What? Have you paid much attention to the story about what Anthony just said?
No, that's the bad part. You know, they're trying to skirt the issues that, you know, every state that initially set up medical cannabis had a lot of safety precautions in it, you know, to keep patients safe. And they've skirted the issues of, you know, of these laws because they're calling themselves hemp, you know. I mean, it is crazy. It's only been since the 40s maybe, or the 30s, after the Marijuana Tax Act, which didn't make it illegal, it just put a tax on it, that it's, we haven't looked at cannabis as a medicine, but for thousands of years, it has been a medicine, a food product, a textile. And, we need to sort of get it back to that. And
so I got to ask, as it's most hotly contested topic that we've talked about over the past 4 or 5 months, and that's regarding this hemp ban. We saw Congress and the bill that Senator Mitch McConnell proposed, it passed back in November. And now there's this hemp ban that's going to take place later this year in November. Was that the right decision, or did they sway one way too much in the other direction?
Yeah, I think they swayed one way too much because, like I said, there are reputable hemp organizations, Lazarus Natural, that I would point patients to, Miriam's Hope, Charlotte's Web. Those are companies that are dedicated to creating really good products, full spectrum products. Sometimes they give great discounts to elderly patients or to veterans, and those are the good companies. But because some of these people tried to skirt the issue, make intoxicating products that they sell at gas stations, for kids or whatever, it's created a bad backlash, like everything else in politics.
It segues into my next question from one of our viewers. Brian Dombrowski writes, are you talking to legislators about getting... Oh, did you ask that? Sorry, my apologies. All right, my apologies. But anyway, long story short, you think they swayed one way, like from one end of the spectrum too far to the other side.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess one last question. In terms of the plant, I mean, there are several minor cannabinoids that people have seen real world results with: CBG, CBN, THCV. Right. Is CBD just the tip of the iceberg? And do you think that we get more, I don't want to say complicated, but get more advanced in the way that we're looking at cannabinoids, especially leveraging minors moving forward as therapeutics for patients?
Yeah, there are. I mean, THCA, I think you meant, is the acidic cannabinoid, which is before it's hydroxylated. So, and we're finding out now lower doses have some very interesting benefits, CBG, new research coming out. So those other cannabinoids, and in a full spectrum hemp product even, or cannabinoid, you'll have these minor cannabinoids. And the hope is, once we get to the phase where we can do more testing and look at it, we can look at different chemovars that may have higher of the minor cannabinoids in it, and do studies on that. And there are reputable companies that make hemp and that make higher CBG products. They might be CBG with CBD, 50/50, and processors that are doing that. So at one point, we need to get some real world data on that. We are getting it slowly.
But all in all, patients should go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, but again, we can't have this very minor definition of hemp where you're not allowed to have other cannabinoids in it, including THC, and that's the problem.
Listen, appreciate the transparency and the honesty and just the landscape of it all. But the pilot program, it should obviously translate into better guidance and safer products because of this pilot program, which you fingers crossed. Is there any failures? We talk about all these things as to like how this is going to be deemed a success, but is there any failures that you're concerned about that we should also be paying attention to as well?
Yeah, I mean, you need to have somebody knowledgeable that's not like burnt out in their practice because their ACO's on their neck and they have to see 500 patients next week and can spend 10 minutes with them and just say, here you go, try this, come back in 3 months. You can't. You need to follow them. I've seen that in my practice, again, especially seniors. They don't have the patience. They take a pill, they feel better right away. And you really need to have somebody, I hate to say, holding their hand. And if it can't be those overly burdened, busy primary care or oncologists in these organizations, maybe assigning a knowledgeable nurse or nurse practitioner in the field that understands it and that can work with them. It really needs to be kind of individualized, personalized, almost concierge type medicine to help them through it.
The problem with that is it's expensive. I mean, me personally, I mean, I leverage those things: concierge medicine, personalized medicine. It's not cheap.
No, it isn't.
But the standard of care is elevated. It's giving me exactly what I need. And I mean, I get my blood taken once a month just to be monitoring everything that's going on and how my body's reacting to everything that I'm putting in it. But unfortunately, like, the masses can't leverage that kind of stuff.
No, but like I said, and diabetes is a good example. There are nurses and practices that really can spend time. There are nutritionists to work with them. There is this kind of push, even with this administration, for more lifestyle medicine to look at these things. So there are ways to do it, and you just have to think of it that way. It can't just be like you're used to: write a prescription, take it, and I'll see you in 3 months. You know, you need to get back. Someone needs to ask you how it's going. Do you want to raise the dose? Things like that.
Have you had conversations with President Trump about this space as a whole? What's it? No,
I have not spoken with President Trump.
Well, it's a question I got to ask. I'm sure people would like to know, but all in all, I think this is great, helpful information. Some of the feedback we're getting is people are very grateful that you took the time to obviously explain this whole program itself, and just really giving a landscape as to where we're at, and more importantly, where this needs to go. So I think ultimately we'd love to have you back on as things start to materialize and develop over the coming months. But all in all, again, on behalf of Anthony and I and our whole community, I appreciate you for logging on here today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. All right. Tell the team we say hi. And we've know a lot of the people over at the NCCC. And thank you to them as well for setting this up. But let's keep in touch. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Vidoker.